raise your glass up high. Turn it up, it's time. Tall boy on the line. Everything will last. Raise your...
Welcome back to episode 263 of the Tall Boy Radio Podcast. And as we always say, who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Wow. Well, let me tell you this. We have a celebration tonight. 5 years of the Tall Boy Radio Podcast. That's what we're celebrating. 5 years ago today, we founded the podcast and we're going strong somehow. And when we talked about it, Gaz and I, we said there was only one guest we wanted to get on for the 5th year anniversary. He wasn't available, but we got someone just as good. I'm only joking. We got Vic Ferrari with us tonight. But before we say hello to Vic, Gaz, say hello, dude.
Evening all, evening world. And as Adam said, and he made a little jest. There was absolutely only ever one person that was going to come on and celebrate our 5th anniversary, and that is our very, very good friend from initially way back in the day, really. And we've had him on numerous occasions since. Vic, it's amazing to catch up again. And if you just want to say your hellos.
Vic, Bean, Gaz, thank you so much for having me on your show. This is like being on the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary special.
Yeah, we'll have you back for the 50th as well. No
yeah,
problem.
That's fine. If you're still available, we'll book you. It's okay. Not a problem.
I'm willing.
Indeed. And hello to Stuart Willis, who's watching. So, yeah, whenever you've got a book, we like to get you on. So, as you know, I'm always going to buy that book. Gaz, if you want to hold that one up to the camera. So, this one is called NYPD Presumption and Dysfunction, dude. You want to tell us a little bit about that and the work that went into the cover again? And probably you're going to tell us about the next book you're working on right now. I don't imagine it's going to be too far down the line.
Yeah, like all my books, I'm not a disciplined writer, so all my books are just filled with short stories about the ridiculous things behind the scenes that happen at the New York City Police Department that the average person would go, really? Like something like that would happen? Or, I mean, are there scandals in some of them? Yeah, but the majority of it is just some cops, the way they get themselves into trouble. This latest book I kind of dived into more. There's a couple of stories in there about major cases and investigations I worked on.
No, fair play. And we're looking forward to hearing a little bit about that as well. So are you working on a new book right now then? This one's done?
I am. I just got this Presumption and Dysfunction out just before the holidays. And right now I'm about 100 pages in on another NYPD themed book. I don't have a title. That's what I always struggle with because it's short stories. So I've got to find a theme, and I haven't found that theme yet.
Yeah. I tell you what, he's a grafter.
Yeah, I tell you, he works hard all of his life. He works hard. The boy does. No, look, we're dead proud of, obviously, all for you and all your books, and sort of can't wait for your next one. It's amazing when we read about some of the stories, but it's even better when you come onto our podcast and you can sort of bring the stories to life. And we just love having you on and just sort of listening to you recount some of your tales of back in the day when work potentially was a little bit harder than maybe you were, although you are working incredibly hard now on your own podcast and things. And that was something that, we perhaps will touch on in a little bit, just how that's going and what the future lies for podcasts and stuff. But if you can, can you give us just a bit of a sneak preview of potentially one of the stories that might crop up in your new book, maybe?
The new book that I'm working on now?
Well, that would be good.
Okay. Actually, you know what? This will help me because I often, when I've got a story, when I'm working on a story, when I tell it, it jogs my memory and it also helps me write. Okay. So it's the early 90s. I'm working in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. The Bronx, believe it or not, has some really nice areas. And this part of the Bronx, very leafy neighborhood, and it's got 2 or 3 very prestigious schools. I think two are primary schools, one's a high school. Yeah. And this is where New York City blue bloods send their children to school. Chevy Chase went to one of these schools. Rudy Giuliani's kid went to one of these schools. Carly Simon, the singer, went to these schools. So people from Manhattan, believe it or not, Upper West Side, Upper East Side, send their kids to these schools. I can only imagine what the tuition is. The problem with these schools is they're in a hubris. and they believe that their schools are sovereign land.
Right.
So the first incident I had with this school, I would drive by them all the time. The first incident I have, I go to one of these schools for a bomb threat. And I'm like, okay, we get to the school and I'm dealing with this administrator and she's jumping up and down. She hands me 3 sheets of paper. She says it came with a note. And she hands me several sheets of paper and I go, oh, hold on. Where is the device? She goes, oh, I had my security guard put it out in the schoolyard. I'm like, what? Right? So I said, you had to move it? She goes, well, I didn't want it going off in my office. So I said, okay. So now, like that should have been my first clue, right? So as I'm walking, I'm thumbing through these 3 or 4 sheets of legal paper, and it's ramblings by a lunatic. You know what I mean? It's making no sense. So we get to the schoolyard, and there's like a 70-year-old security guard. Like his glasses are like this. He's got like like a cheap Parker coat with a pat, and guy's sweating profusely. And I'm like, Pop, where is it? And he goes, I put it by the bleachers. I go, are you all right? He goes, yeah. So I'm trying to talk to him, right? In the meantime, the radio's blowing up, no pun intended. The sergeant wants to know what's going on. And I said, yeah, there's something. There's a device in a box. I said, call the bomb squad. Let's better be safe than sorry. But like, if I were a betting man, just by the note, it's a lunatic. So I'm looking at it, and she goes, and the principal makes a comment about that she knows the woman. I go, oh, hold on. What do you mean? She goes, oh, that's Mrs. Rosenschwartz. Her son is or daughter is in 4th grade or whatever grade it was. And I'm like, it's a parent whose kid goes here? I go, is the kid in class now? She goes, oh, yeah. And I'm saying to myself, not once did she try to evacuate the school through this backside. She just didn't want her office messed with. I said, all right. Bomb squad comes. Guy puts on that green anteater outfit, like he's walking to the surface of the moon. And we're watching him. We're watching him from, a couple, maybe 100 yards away. The guy opens the box, and like within seconds, like it wasn't like and this is before they had that robot with the claw and all that bullshit.
Yeah.
So he opens it up and he pulls out a Barbie doll with a couple of sheets of 1-ply toilet paper, right? So I'm laughing. I think the whole thing is ridiculous, right? So I turned to the school administrator, and I got the note, and I said, I'm going to need this woman's contact information because obviously we're going to lock her up or throw her in the loony bin. You can't fucking, and this is pre 9/11, but still, you can't do something like this, right? I mean, what is this woman thinking? So she goes, well, I'm going to have to run that by the administration first. I said, what? I said, she goes, well, I don't know if we want to make a big deal of this. I go, you got the fucking bomb squad here and cops and helicopters, and you wanted the circus. You got the circus. I said, we got to look into this, right? So we're waiting on the detectives, right? So she's hemming and hawing about that note, right? So I start talking to the security guard. She goes, whoa, what are you doing? I says, I'm asking him. She goes, you can't talk to him until I talk to the administration. I go, lady, you're like this close to getting locked up because it's called obstructing governmental administration. It's a charge in New York. I mean, it wouldn't go anywhere. But anyway, the sergeant was getting pissed off. Everybody into the station house. So we bring her, the security guard, into the station house. She's upstairs. She's upstairs now with the detectives, right? I'm tasked with vouchering evidence, which consists of a Barbie doll. First time I ever picked up a Barbie doll in my life, and toilet paper, like one cardboard box. What Barbie is this? And 3 sheets of toilet paper, right? So after I'm done with that bullshit, I go upstairs, and they're still arguing. And what happens is, in the meantime, the phones start lighting up in the precinct because now she must have made a call or somebody in the school made a call. These are people with big money, okay? Like they can pick up the phone and call the mayor's office, and he's going to take that call. And first it starts with we're getting calls from local politicians. Then we're getting calls from big politicians. Then we're getting calls from chiefs at One Police Plaza. So the whole thing got swept under the rug. That was, no one got arrested because I asked the detectives, they go, that's it. It's done. I was like, okay. So about a year later, driving in that neighborhood, and I'm in uniform, comes over as a robbery in progress at the school. I pull up, there's 3, I think they were like freshmen. They were young. Basically, it was 3 rich kids got robbed by 3 poor kids. pulled a knife on them, took their Walkman and whatever money or wallet or whatever, and they fled towards Broadway. I says, get in. I go, how long in the past? Like 5 minutes. Get in. So now, when you have a robbery victim or victims, what you want to do is get them in the car, and you're going to start canvassing. And now and as you're canvassing, the driver's driving, looking. The recorder, the second cop, is going to be asking questions because he wants a clothing description, direction of flight, what their hair looked like, their mindset. He wants to get the whole story, right? When they pile in the car, here comes that pain in the ass principal again. She comes running out in heels. She looked like Fran Drescher in The Nanny with like that jet black hair. Right? And she's like, excuse me, officer. And I'm like, oh, with this fucking pain in the ass again. And the kids in the back seat start laughing because they heard me, right? So she sticks her head in the window. She goes, where are you taking them? I says, they just got robbed. She goes, I know. I called 911. I go, oh. I go, so she goes, you wait right here. You can't take them off the school grounds without a member of the school administration. She goes, we got to get the security guard. I'm saying to myself, this poor security guard. I'm thinking to myself, it's the same old man they're going to pull out of the bullpen. You know, like, get the 70-year-old guy out. Walk this fucker out, right? So I'm going, lady, I just get away from the car, right? So she goes, it's against school policy. And I had a mouth back then. I am now more reserved. I said, stick your school policy up your ass. And we drove off, right? So the kids in the back seat are laughing their heads off, right? Like, I can't believe you said that to her. And I'm like, she is a pain in the ass. I'm like, yeah, you don't know the half of it, right? Driving around, catch these 3 kids just before they got on the train at 242nd Street in Broadway. Stop the kids, go, that's them. Stop them, pat them down, recover a knife, recover their property, call another radio car over. Another radio car comes, takes those 3 juveniles to the station house, right? I take the kids, my victims, to the precinct. 15 minutes later, who's in there? The school administrator and the same security guard. I was like, boy, this guy should get like fucking combat pay for what they're putting him through. And he has to deal with this old bit, right? So same thing. But this time she wants us to make a civilian complaint on me. Like in New York, nowadays, forget it. They'll make a complaint on you in the drop of a hat. But like, if you rack up too many of those things, it can negatively impact your career. Because even if you work in a really shitty precinct and you're doing God's work and the drug dealers make complaints on you and stuff, and then you put in for like a specialized unit or something, it could hold you back because some supervisor, I don't know, maybe he don't know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what wound up happening is she wanted to make a civilian complaint, and my sergeant talked her out of it. But you know, he's like, listen, he just locked up 3 kids that robbed 3 of your students. Should he have let them get away and talked with you and the security guard who had to get woken up from his nap? So, you know, it was just one of those things with that school. So my sergeant, I had that sector for a while. He moved me to the other end of the precinct. So if I wouldn't be the main car going to that school.
Nice. I wonder what she thought when she realized it was you for the second time, because you thought, oh no, not this bitch again. And she thought, oh my God, not this guy again.
Want to know something? I don't think she remembered me.
Oh, really?
Okay.
I don't know. I really don't. It just was, she wasn't a fan of the police. It was more about like BBC show, keeping up appearances, right? Yeah. She didn't, you know, they don't want it getting out there that, you know, the parents of these schools don't want to hear there was a robbery or there was a bomb threat, because you know what? Then if it's on the 6 o'clock news, somebody at their country club might see it. So, you know, oh, you're sending your kid to the Bronx. Why don't you send them to Dalton and a school in Manhattan, where it can happen there too? You know what I mean? But it's just keeping up appearance. That's the name of that story. Keeping up appearances.
I like it.
Nice. There you go. You see.
There we go. Yeah, Tallboy Radio, we can be your muse if that's
what you are.
We tease it out. We tease the story out, and then there's a flash of inspiration, and there you go. You see.
There you go. There you go. Indeed. Yeah. I was going to say, actually, if she did remember you, how she would retell it from her point of view. I'd like to hear that side of the story told as well. Maybe we should try and track her down and get her on and hear her point of view.
I would have to check my memo books if I have that one, and see which school it was, because it was 3, and I'm sure her name is in there.
Do you keep a lot of the stuff then from your time on the force? Have you got a lot of mementos and stuff like that? A lot of your notes?
I do, but I haven't had I rarely consult with it. I have or had a photographic memory. That's for when my mind starts going, and then I can go to those notes and papers and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, cool. Well, Stuart would like to ask a question then. He says, I have a question for Vic. You see films on Netflix like Gotti. How accurate are those sort of films to what really happened? Well, stay tuned for a couple of weeks' time, Stuart. You might find someone else will answer that question as well. But yeah, Vic, did you want to answer that question for Stuart?
Yeah, you know, it's I liked Get Gotti, and then there was another one, the same people that were, I can't think of the name of it, but it's accurate. I mean, everybody's, you know, they're interviewing it from the cops' perspective. That worked on the case. They're interviewing the prosecutors from their perspective. They have former wise guys that are talking about, like Anthony Ruggiano Jr., who he's an excellent source. I watch his podcast all the time. But yeah, it's pretty accurate. From the Get Gotti thing, that Diane Jack alone, in my opinion, I mean, she got somebody killed. I mean, the FBI had an informant for years, and the guy had an agreement with the FBI that I'm not testifying. I'll feed you stuff all day long, but I'm not. Don't put me on the stand. You jeopardize my life and my family. And she indicted him on something and said, I'm going to expose you in open court unless you testify. And he goes, I have an agreement. I'm not testifying. Are you out of your mind? So what she did was they all got locked up together, and they're all standing before the judge, and she turns around and outs him in front of John Gotti and all his guys.
Wow.
And basically he torpedoed her case because he refused to cooperate. And the case fell apart, but Gotti had him killed. I mean, first he had him shunned that he wasn't allowed to come around anymore. And then I think it was Tommy Karate, Tommy Patera, and Eddie Leno shot him like a million times coming out of his house going to work one morning. So, yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Which, so just the flip side to that then. So when you see, you know, being an ex, you know, NYPD and being ex-detective, when you see some of these films, is there anything that really sort of gets you go? Is there anything that is so wildly inaccurate that it's like, oh, come on, guys, you could have done a better job with that sort of thing? Is there, like, and not just you, but like ex-cops that get really pissed off because actually certain things are portrayed and that's just so far removed from the truth that it really, really pisses you off?
Well, yeah, like not so much the documentaries. The documentaries, they try to get it right. I mean, sometimes they edit it to make a guy say one thing and he really meant something else. Yeah, because they want that explosion. But TV shows like Blue Bloods or NYPD Blue, it's like, you know, or the movies like Lethal Weapon. You know, you got a guy, he's chasing somebody, he wrecks like 13 cars, and they're going home. Like, what are you kidding? You're not going anywhere. Or guys get into a shooting, you know, you discharge your weapon. Even if you discharge your weapon, in best case scenario, nobody gets hit and it's justified. Minimal 10, 12 hours, they're going to be checking your gun, internal affairs, talk to you. If you shoot somebody, you're involved in a shooting, you go 24, 48 hours that you're awake. First, it's going to be the duty captain and the sergeant. Then it's going to be internal affairs. Then a prosecutor is going to show up at the precinct with a stenographer and take your statement. They're going to inspect your guns. I mean, it's not like TV where you're going to go home and like 10 minutes and like, hey, Beans, guys, I just lit somebody up. Let's go grab a beer. It's not like that.
No, I don't imagine it is, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, it would be cool in a way, you know. Yeah. We've just taken some guys down. Hey, let's go and grab a beer, shoot some pool. That'd be cool. Let's do that.
It wouldn't make for good TV, would it?
No,
watching some guy filling in paperwork for the next 24 hours.
Exactly, yeah.
So something else you do then on top of your books, we need to give this a shout out as well, because I've been looking at your numbers on YouTube and stuff, and as we were discussing at the start, very, very impressive work. So you've got your own podcast now, is NYPD Through the Looking Glass, which is named after one of your books. Do you want to tell us about that and some of the guests that you've had on there and some of the guests that you've set us up with as well? Because, you know, some of the guys we've had, if you've ever wondered why the likes of Ramesh Nyberg came on, well, it was Vic, who was our unofficial booking agent who set that up for us.
Yeah, I started a podcast about a year and a half ago, NYPD Through the Looking Glass. I named it after one of my books. And basically, what I wanted to do when I got it off the ground up and running was I thought it would be interesting because New York City at any given time police department has 40,000 members. So I thought, all right, 1 week I'm going to have a guy on from the mounted unit and talk about what it's like to be a mounted cop, or a guy on from the bomb squad, or a guy that worked in homicide. The problem with cops, especially NYPD guys, they're not really willing to talk. So once I first started the podcast, it was like pulling teeth to get guests on. They got to see, cops, they're very suspicious characters, and they want to make sure you're not going to embarrass them or bring something up and embarrass them, or they don't want to step out of bounds or step on anyone's toes. So when I get an NYPD guest on, which I have, that's great. But what I do is I'll tell stories from my books, or I'll comment on what's going on with crime stories. But I've kind of pivoted, and I've gotten a lot of ex-organized crime guys on, either guys that were informants or guys that served federal time. I've had a couple of gangsters on. Lou Ferrante with the Gambino crime family is a hijacker. Bobby Luisi, Boston and Philly mobster. So I've kind of had like a hodgepodge of criminals, cops and criminals on my show, which is funny because then I catch shit from the NYPD guys, because then guys will start writing me anonymously. I can't believe you had this guy on. I'm like, guy served his time. The guy wrote a book. He's not getting into trouble. He didn't kill anybody. What do you want to do? Put him away forever?
Yeah. Have you had anybody on? And I don't know whether we've asked this before, but have you had anybody on your podcast that you effectively locked up and has now come out, and you've spoken to about that? And I don't know whether we've asked that question before, but be interested to know whether you have or not.
No, the closest is that guy Lou Ferrante I was telling you about. He was a professional car thief for years.
Right.
He was in Queens. I was in the Bronx. But it was funny because he was telling me a car thief's mindset, and I was explaining to him on the other side, like I was in the auto crime divisions. I was in another team. Like he was running around stealing cars in Queens. I was running around locking up guys in the Bronx and Manhattan. But it was interesting. And I when I started the podcast, I go, did you think 25 years ago you'd be talking to an auto crime detective? Because I would have said you're out of your mind. He said, no way I'd talk to a cop. So now I've never had anybody on that I've arrested, but there's a couple of guys I'm thinking about reaching out to. But you got to be careful with that because, they're not really happy you put them in jail for years. It's not like not everybody that goes to jail comes out, an enlightened person.
Yeah, completely rehabilitated. Yeah, not always the case now.
Where do you live again? I don't want that shit.
Yeah, I'm down. I won't tell anybody where you live, just in case there's anybody listening. But yeah, I'm not in New York anymore, so that's fine.
That's true.
Yeah. Do you ever think about that? Do you ever think? I mean, we know that you aren't in New York. I'm sure we said you're in Florida. We've talked about.
I was going to say that, dude. Come on.
But Florida's a big state. Do you ever worry about that? That you? I mean, obviously you're not using your real name, but I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a number of perps out there that would perhaps recognize you.
Yeah. I'm careful. You know what I mean? It's not like I, put anybody away for life and they got out.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I really don't. I don't give it much thought. But it's in me working in law enforcement all that time. Yeah. So I always look over my shoulder. I will tell you, like, probably I had 6 or 7 years on. I ran into something with someone from an organized crime group that I had a death threat, and the intelligence division from the NYPD looked into it and said it's credible, and he's the type of guy that if he could get to you, he would. Luckily for me, he got grabbed for double homicide.
Right.
So he wound up going away for a while.
Yeah. And I imagine the type of people that make those kind of threats are the kind of people that carry out like the kind of threats that get themselves in a bit of trouble anyway. And got another question then for Stuart then. Stuart said, is it true that there is a taxi that's used as an undercover police car in New York?
Well, every precinct. So in New York City, you have 77. Now I think it's going to be 78 police stations. Okay. Back then, I don't know if they do anymore because New York went bizarre. But in my time, every precinct had a couple of unmarked police cars for plainclothes, not detectives, but guys that were just riding around looking for crimes. And guys would decorate them to look like a cab, put an antenna on it, get stickers and stuff. Now, in addition to that, New York City had this great unit. If you want to know about it, go watch the 1985 movie with Sylvester Stallone called Nighthawks. It's about the New York City street crime unit and the decoy unit. And what they would do is they would drive around in gypsy cabs and taxi cabs. And yeah, they had yellow taxi cabs with the numbers on it. It looked just like a taxi cab. And one guy would drive and one guy would sit in the back seat, and they'd roll up on people all the time. I don't remember, someone's going to correct me on it, but so on the back of those, on the top of the taxis, the medallion number, and I think the second letter, if it was an R, meant it was a police car.
Right.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Wow.
So you'd have to be very perceptive to see that, I suppose. You'd be like hailing something down. It's like, no. Next week, blues and twos, come on. It's like, yeah. Oh, shit, wrong car.
Yeah, you get in the back anyway.
Yeah.
But we would borrow, I'll tell Stu a quick story. When I was in narcotics, right, we would do what's called controlled deliveries. So a controlled delivery means the post office, either through the postal inspector or customs with a dog, hits on a package.
Yeah.
They'll get a search warrant. They'll open it up and go coke, heroin, pills, whatever, right? If they don't want it, they close the package up and they give it to us. What we do is we borrow a mail truck, a mail guy's uniform. I think also we were doing, I don't know if FedEx, but I think it was UPS for a while. And then they didn't want to cooperate anymore because they didn't want to get one of their drivers hurt, but definitely the post office. So what we would do is borrow a mail truck, and I've done it. You dress up like a mailman, right? You've got a Kel on you, which is a microphone. You go into the building, you go up to the door, you knock on the door. Guy opens the door. Please sign for this. Guy signs for it. As you're coming down the stairs, you're talking into your microphone. All right, I looked in the apartment. There's 2 male Hispanics and a female. Okay. As you're coming down the stairs, here comes the field team. You just hold the door for them. They come running past you with a battering ram and knock the fucking door down and lock the guys up.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
I thought you were going to say, yeah, they gave it to us, and then we just went at a wild party back at home somewhere. That's what I thought you were going to say.
But I'll tell you a backstory to one of those. So we did a controlled delivery one time, and I think in the package was a couple of ounces of pure heroin. Now, you can make a lot more money with heroin than coke. So a kilo of coke back in my time was $25,000. A kilo of heroin is $180,000 because you can step on it so many more times.
Yeah.
So we had a couple of ounces of pure heroin, and we were at the precinct, and we opened it up, and it was just sitting there. And one of the detectives, when he put it down, it was like a poof. And we all fucking jumped up from the fucking table, right? And we were laughing about it. And I turned to my lieutenant and I go, we should really get an exposure number.
Yeah.
He goes, why? I says, because if one of us fucking gets a random drug test, like, this is fucking pure shit. This isn't like just touching, you know what I mean? So we all went and got exposure. He goes, yeah. We all got exposure numbers. I'll tell you, we're on narcotics. This is a true story. I was in narcotics, and there was this cop bar I used to go to. It was right next door to the precinct. And it had a tiny bathroom with no lock on the door. And it had a urinal. It was fucked up. It had a urinal and a toilet.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was one of those places, if you went in the egg, you got to go quick because someone's going to come right in there. And it's like, this is a fucking peep show. So anyway, I'm taking a piss and the fucking door comes off the hinges, right? And this drunken guy that I didn't know him, but I knew him from narcotics. I used to see him around, right? And he's just pissing on the wall. I mean, he's just fucking drunk off his ass. He's sweating profusely. He looks like death. Oh, yeah, I know you. Don't you work in... He knew me from the building. I said, yeah. Thought nothing of it. It's like, wow, he's a bad fucking drunk, right? A couple of weeks later, his team does a search warrant, and they got, I don't know, a couple ounces of coke, a kilo, but it was loose. It wasn't like a brick. So they're sitting around, and they're vouchering the property, and he walks up to the pile, takes out a scoop in front of everybody, scoops out a couple of things of coke, puts it in a baggie, and walks away. And fucking, this is a true story. And the sergeant's looking at everybody, and he's like, this has got to be a joke, right? Like, we're on fucking candid camera. Like,
Did you just see that?
Yeah, right. They're all like, they can't believe what they just saw. And he goes into the men's room and he comes out a couple of minutes later, high as a kite. So the sergeant goes, okay. The guy's name was Bobby. And he goes, you know what, Bobby? We're going to start cutting back. I'm not giving everybody overtime. You can go home, right? And he sent him home. He got on the phone with Internal Affairs, right? The guy lived upstate. He lived like 60 miles north. Internal Affairs showed up at his house. They're like, you're going to piss in this, right? And he's like, well, I can't pee. So they took him to the New York State Trooper Barracks. And he tried to hold it the best he could. And then when he peed, they said he tested the highest positive of all time. Because like in the NYPD, when you get a random drug test, the notification comes down in the morning, and then you got to get your way over to left rack to pee in the cup. But like, since he just did coke like 15 minutes, well, an hour or two earlier, he was like the highest level of coke in any NYPD member.
Brilliant. I can just imagine him like literally walking up as though it's just the absolute most natural thing in the world. Was taking this little scoop, and everybody else is just like,
how out of control he had to have been to have done that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that won't be the first thing he's had that day.
No, a little bit of loose cannon, maybe. That. I was going to say, in terms of that, then did the other guys not sort of dig him out? Was it a case of like, seriously, dude, what are you doing? Or did everybody just like, yeah, just let him go home? Internal Affairs will sort it.
Everybody was scared. Everybody was like, because with the NYPD, when they suspect corruption, they don't come in with a scalpel. They often throw in a hand grenade. Everybody gets modified. Everybody gets shipped to different places. And the NYPD doesn't do an investigation into corruption like quick. Yeah. You could languish somewhere punching paper without your guns, without your shield for months, years.
Yeah.
So everybody walked away from him. Like everybody's like, I don't want a piece of this. Yeah.
Wow.
No, I'll bet. So here's a question for you then, in terms of your books. With doing the podcast, would you do a book about the stories that have been shared on there? So you'd have to get the permission of the other people who shared them as well. But collation of those stories might go nicely with, as one of your stocking fillers.
My last book, I kind of went that way. So my latest book, I explained how I met some of my guests.
Right.
And their stories. And like, I mean, one guy, did I hook you guys up with Matt Cox?
We emailed him.
Yeah, I think we sort of tried to make contact. And I think Bean sent a couple of sort of requests and stuff, but nothing really ever came back from memory. So
no.
Okay, so Matt Cox defrauded banks and mortgage lenders out of $25 million.
Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, when he knew the cops were coming from him, he had all these multiple identities.
Right.
He was catch me if you can. Literally after 9/11. And I was a cop. So he did this down here in Florida. I was a cop in New York. He was all over the media.
Yeah.
And he got caught like everybody else. He did 13 years in federal prison, and he started a podcast. So he saw me doing interviews, and he reached out to me from another podcast guest. I'd love to have you on your show. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll do Zoom. He goes, well, you're in Florida. Come to my studio. And I'm like, it was like a drug deal. Like, I was so paranoid of like going, because this guy, he's a convicted felon. He did 13 years in jail. Come to my house and film this. You know what I mean? Like it's like, am I getting set up to get whacked? But, couldn't have been nicer. He's got a great show. It's called Inside True Crime, you guys. He gets really good guests, and I will send him your information again.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Great guest to have. Just his story, how he defrauded all those, and his time in prison and how he survived. It's a fascinating story.
You see, and Beans might sort of correct me, but I'm not aware that we've had anybody on that perhaps has been incarcerated before. So it would be, I don't know, have we?
Not anybody's ever declared it to us.
Well, no. But I'm just thinking, somebody that maybe has been inside and then is able to recount just actually what it was like being inside. That might be quite cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely would. No, I don't believe we have.
No, I don't think we have. So that's definitely something that, hook us up, Vic.
Absolutely.
I think we did try to make contact, and then I'd say maybe a reply, but then nothing really came of that. So, but yeah, that would be amazing if you could. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, if you could do even if you title it as well, you could still tie in that NYPD theme because of the name of the podcast. I personally think it fit quite nicely with the theme of your books, and not only that, it's just a different aspect to it. And for those of you who know you from your books, it might pull them in to listen to your podcast as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was, it's funny. I never thought of putting myself out there for anything. I just wanted a quiet life. But when I started writing these books, I realized if I want them to sell, I got to advertise them. You could have the greatest thing in the world. If nobody knows about it, it's not going to sell. So I started booking like 2-3 years ago. I started just putting myself out there, writing cover letters like to you guys and going on shows. And that opened up some opportunities for me. And then I said, you know what? Let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can get a podcast and kind of cross-pollinate this. And now, the podcast is starting to take off a little bit. I'm getting some traction. So I'll see where it goes.
Yeah. I think you're doing yourself a bit of an injustice there. It's starting to get a bit of traction. I think it's doing all right, pal. I think you're doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and what really happened was you said, if those two wackadoos in Cheshire can do it, so can I.
No, listen, if you guys had a shitty podcast, you'd be a one and done. I enjoyed your podcast. I mean, you guys got a good rapport. You're funny. You're technically sound. I mean, when I was doing 5 to 10 podcast episodes a week for months, I was on some really good ones. And then I was on some really shitty ones. I think I told you guys, I did one with a guy in Canada, and it was dimly lit, the guy I was talking to. He must have been like a trapper or something. There was like cages. It looked like something out of fucking Silence of the Land. And then he had like a taxidermy collection all over the fucking place, like, like a stuffed Wolverine and a stuffed fox. And then above his head was a moldy drop ceiling. And I'm saying to myself, no one's going to fucking watch this. But the way I looked at it was, it's going to help me tell stories. It's going to help me with the timing, because there is timing when you're on a show. It's like, you got to know when to shut up and let the guests ask questions.
Yeah. Funnily enough, actually, that sounds a lot like our friend Johnny Simon.
Yeah, we need to maybe hook those two up. That might be quite interesting.
Yeah.
No, but it's, look, we love having you on, and you're right in terms of the whole point of a podcast. And sometimes it doesn't really work, because we have some guests and it's like, oh my God, it's like pulling teeth. So you end up talking like almost more than the guest. And that absolutely is not what we want. We book guests so that our listeners can listen to our guests. And every now and then, you probably know this, Vic, I like to talk. And, when you're on, I can shut up, which is amazing, because you do all the talking, which is brilliant, because they get our listeners don't want to listen to me because they get bored of me. So they want to listen to all of our guests. So it's incredible. You do get some where you're like, oh my God, this is really, and we've had some really bad episodes where we're like, why? I look at Adam, I'm like, why did we book this guest? What are you doing to me?
Yeah, you'll know it in the first couple of seconds, and it's like the timing's off, or they just don't want to reveal anything about themselves. It's like pulling teeth, and you say to yourself, oh, this is, I feel like I'm on the Titanic and the band stopped playing.
It's like the longest hour in the world, and you're just like, and it gets to like, I don't know, 52 minutes. Well, we're coming up to the hour mark now, and like you shut it down like 10 minutes early, because you're just like, I literally run out of things to say.
No, thankfully, we've not had too many of those, I don't think, over the years. Although those who've listened right from the start will probably be able to name one or two. Yeah. So you're working on your book. You've given us a story from your new book there that you're working through. Did you want to share a story from your current one then, Presumption and Dysfunction? Give people a little bit of extra reason to go out there and buy it.
Have you read it yet?
I haven't, no. So
okay.
I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. The amount of time I get to dedicate to reading, unfortunately, is nowhere near as much as I'd like, unless, of course, it's things like Peppa Pig.
All right, I'll tell you one that's pretty interesting. It's called The Missing Murder Suspect. So there was this district attorney in Manhattan. Unfortunately, he's deceased, but he was a heavy hitter. He prosecuted a lot of high-profile homicides in New York City. So I had a working rapport with this guy. Like, he would call me sometimes because my specialty was cars and finding people. So one day he calls me up and he says, hey, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. I go, sure, Bill. And he goes, I need you to find somebody for me. I says, you need a witness found? He goes, no, he's a murder suspect. So I started laughing. I go, well, if he's a murder suspect, Manhattan North and Manhattan South homicide is looking for him. He goes, this is kind of all hands on deck. And I said, why? And he says, because the FBI is now involved in this and they're looking to grab this guy. I go, so what do you need me for? He goes, if you find him, the FBI can't take the case away from me. I go, oh, I said, all right. So what's the story with this guy? And like, this thing takes so many twists and turns. So basically, you got a guy in Long Island who's ripping off armored cars. Him and a couple of guys, they're ripping off armored cars.
Yeah.
And 10 years earlier, they rob an armored car, and these three guys kill an armored car guard, right? So now they got a homicide on them. And the leader of this group, this guy, Christian Tarantino, like Quentin Tarantino, he doesn't think one of his guys is going to hold up. He knows the FBI is involved in this now. They subpoenaed him. So he lures, the guy in his gang to his garage, kills him, puts him in a tool chest, puts him on a boat, takes him out into the Atlantic, and dumps the body. Well, the body pops up. So now he's got 2 homicides under his belt. His friend, I don't know if this guy was involved in the armored car robberies, but his friend, you remember the band, the rock star Dee Snider?
Yeah.
All right. His brother-in-law was associated with this guy, Tarantino. And he knows about the murders, and he asked Tarantino about the murders and secretly records them. Right. And then tells him, you got all this cash, I want to taste. So he's trying to extort a guy that's already killed an armored car driver and one of his guy in his crew. So he goes to this kid, Justin Bressman, who works at his gym, and he says, I'll give you $35,000 if you kill Dee Snider, brother-in-law. So Justin Bressman, okay. So basically what they do is the guy that's going to get killed works on a crane in a construction site in Manhattan. So he goes to work first thing in the morning before the sun comes up. They get the guy's schedule, and this Justin Bressman knows the guy. So he bumps into him in a Manhattan street, and the guy goes, what are you doing here? And when he goes to put down his lunch pail to shake his hand, he picks up a silencer-equipped pistol and shoots him in the face. And this guy falls down, and Justin Bressman leaves. Now Justin Bressman is missing. So the district attorney calls me up and says, my murder suspect, Justin Bressman, who more than likely killed this guy in a Manhattan street with a silencer-equipped pistol, he's missing. And I go, well, did he report himself missing? Or he goes, all I know is, his father's in the paper. His father's telling anybody that listen, my kid's gone. My kid's missing. I don't know where he is. He goes, I don't know if he's blowing a smoke screen to cover for his kid who just took off.
Yeah.
So I start looking into it. Justin Bressman lived in the Bronx. His car turns up in Brooklyn, burned. Okay. And I start looking at everything. And it just seems like after that car turned up burned, he vanished off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
No financial records, no phone records, nothing. Everything just goes to a dead end. So, this wasn't my case. I'm just a hired gun looking for this guy. So after a couple of weeks, I called Bill up and I go, Bill, look, I said, I spent about as much time as I can. I got cases piling up. I says, unless you request me to work for you specifically, my lieutenant, he goes, nah, listen, I appreciate what you did. Don't worry about it. So I never gave it a second thought. So this must have happened about 2003, 2000, something like that. I'm retired. And last summer, I'm writing my book, and I thought about it. And I says, whatever happened to this case? So I start pulling up newspaper articles. Well, it turns out this Christian Tarantino was charged for all those murders. Mm-hmm. They convicted him on the murder of the armored car driver. They convicted him of throwing that guy, killing his buddy and throwing him in the ocean.
Yeah.
They convicted him of conspiracy to kill Justin Bressman because they never found because they couldn't. They knew that he asked another guy to help kill him, but he didn't do it. So there was a conspiracy to kill him. But anyway, they got him on 2 murders, the bank robbery, life in prison, and he's got Parkinson's disease. And the family wanted him what happened to Justin Bressman? Like, where is he? And he wouldn't say. He goes, I'm suffering enough too. If you think I'm not suffering, so he's going to take to his grave. Right now, I looked him up. He's in federal prison, I think, in Texas. But yeah, a lot of people died as a result of an armored car robbery.
Wow. Just goes to show them that these little things that, I don't say little things, that's disrespectful, but these things that happen, they don't just happen there. It sets off a chain of events, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It went on for 20 years.
Yeah. And just one thing you mentioned there, and again, apologies if we've sort of covered this before, but you mentioned like the FBI and the TV always portray it as though it's like a pissing contest. It's like, it's the detectives or it's the certain precinct, versus the FBI. In terms of sort of who does what, who trumps who, just very, very quickly, if you can, just explain how that works. So what's the difference? When does the FBI get involved, and at what point do they go, "Now you can all fuck off, like we're doing this now"? Is there an easy answer?
Oh, no. So think of the FBI. Think of you're sitting down, you two guys and your wives are sitting down to eat, and there's a knock at the door, and an uninvited dinner guest comes to your house and says, "What are you having for dinner? That smells good." And they don't bring bread or wine.
Yeah.
And that's what happens a lot of times. They catch wind that you're working on something that they think they can take federally with a U.S. attorney, and they'll say, "Well, we can work together." And this is just my experience. I know guys that have had very good experiences that they're not big on sharing information.
Yeah.
They're going to get to the front of the press conference. So, I mean, sometimes you need them. Sometimes it's something that's going in multiple jurisdictions and, you just don't have the resources or the time or the money or the effort. But yes, there is definitely friction, I know, between the NYPD and the FBI, although they do cases together.
Right.
But in this case, you had a Manhattan district attorney that prosecutes state cases, worried that the FBI was going to try to take his homicide investigation away from him.
Right.
Yeah. So, Gaz asked a question there about pissing contests. Here's another one. So, you're obviously based in the States, and Donald Trump just recently inaugurated as president. What's that like now in the States? Has it changed? Because I know when I was there in September, I was in Texas, and a lot of people were very much looking forward to Trump being president. Didn't see an awful lot of support for either Biden or Harris. Is there a mood that he's going to get stuff done?
He is. I mean, I think he had 4 years to really, you got to remember, the first time he got in, he really, the Republican Party basically gave him, you should pick this guy to do this, you should pick that guy to do that. He was overwhelmed. I think this time he had 4 years to bring his people in, and he's going to do it like Sinatra, my way. And one thing's for sure, there's a lot of people yelling and screaming, jumping up and down that they're losing their perks. But, I'd rather them lose their perks than me being taxed to death.
Yeah. I know, like, a lot of the people I spoke to are very, very excited about the fact that he was going to be in there, the work that he did for the economy last time. There was a perception that this time, especially, I guess, like you say, his hands were a little bit tied. Not only that, when you're serving that first term of office, there's that little bit of pressure. You don't want to piss off too many people because you want that second term as well. When you're in there, you've only got that one shot. He's got 4 years and he ain't getting in again, whether he likes it, although I wouldn't put it past him to change that.
Yeah, he can get in again. Yeah. He can change the constitution. So he could.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's not going to happen.
No, he probably won't. No, he probably. It's interesting. Just obviously we've got quite a few guys that we hook up with and we chat to over in the States. And actually probably 95% of them are pro-Trump and are very, very pro-Trump supporters. And it's just interesting that a couple of douchebags in the UK over here, we look over the States and it's like, if you can actually give people more money in their pocket and you can sort the economy out as such, generally speaking, people are a lot happier when they've got more money in their pocket. And it seemed to us very, from looking from a distance, that Trump is asked about America, whereas maybe Biden and other people are bothered about America and the world. And actually Trump's like, you know what? Fuck the world. We'll just sort America out and we'll do what's right for America and we'll do what's right for the American people. And that's whether you agree or not, that's the perception that we have over here. I said, don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, Stuart's just asked a question there, and it's a great question. I can't see it.
You have to be born in the United States.
He's
South African. Yeah.
I was going to say that. Yeah, my understanding is no, because he's South African. But my question is, in terms of one of the things that he said he'd do last time and didn't, we talked about it. I think was it last week or the week before, Gaza? The JFK files. Are you intrigued? Are you interested?
Yeah. And the guy I'm gonna give to get this guy Lou Ferrante wrote a real great book on it about JFK, the assassination. Yeah, I mean, enough is enough. I mean, the thing that it's happened it happened 60 something years ago. The public has a right to know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are you expecting to see in there? I'm not asking you to nail your colors to the flag or what you believe, but what do you? Is there going to be some shocks? Is there going to be some surprises? Is there going to be stuff that we're not ready to hear, which is what Trump said last time? And on what? I mean, ultimately, could it just be really disappointing? And it was just Lee Harvey Oswald. Do you think there's a chance?
I don't think it was just Lee Harvey Oswald. I think there were, in my opinion, I think that it's highly probable there was more than one shooter. Just the way the whole thing was wrapped up, I didn't buy it. I know, listen, as a detective, I read the 9/11, and I'm not a conspiracy theory. I don't believe everything that I see on the internet, but I remember after 9/11 that that commission book came out detailing the investigation into it. And I mean, as a detective, everybody in my office bought that book. And we all came away with the same conclusion. It was a whitewash.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like they really wanted to get to the root of the problem.
Yeah, and sometimes certain stories, and I'm not sort of playing down anything, but it's almost like too easy. It's too easy to come to that conclusion. And actually, it was almost as though the conclusion was written before the story. It's like you were going to get to that natural end. And actually, without really digging and without really finding out what actually happened, the conclusion was Lee Harvey Oswald, and then he was shot by Jack Ruby. Is that correct? Was it Jack Ruby? Yeah. So, so that there's your patsy, there's your natural end, done, dusted. There you go. Nobody needs to know anything else. Lock the files away. And now, as you said, 60 odd years later, it's like, well, actually, what was that the case? And is there a smoking bullet somewhere? And if there is, what is that? Because I'm intrigued to know that, because I am a bit of a, Adam will tell you, I am a bit of a conspiracy theorist, and for certain things, quite a lot of things, actually, when I think about it. Most things. And I am, and there was footage, I think it was a couple of weeks ago on X, and actually tying into Elon Musk and all that, but there was something on X, and there's the guy in the front of the car that allegedly is turned, and it's some sort of gas compressed pellet or something, and I hadn't seen it, but genuinely the footage looks like he does turn around and something is discharging. Like, shit, I didn't see that. Like when I first watched the Zapruder film years ago, or whatever, you're thinking, fucking hell, what's going on?
It definitely looked to me, he took a shot from the front.
Yeah.
I got a great Jack Ruby story for you. I know a woman, I met her down here in Florida. She's from Chicago. Jack Ruby was originally from Chicago before he went down to Texas to run a titty bar. And when Jack Ruby dies of cancer a couple of years after Kennedy's killed, he's buried in a Chicago area cemetery. So this woman's a couple of years older than me. She said that one night the boys from her neighborhood got drunk. They went to the cemetery and they dug up his gravestone. So it's not like a big tombstone. It's like a concrete thing like this by this. And they took it. And it was in the kid's basement. Well, someone notices it's missing, and now the FBI is involved. And who stole Jack Ruby? So the local gangsters got a hold of the kid and says, get that fucking thing out of your basement and return it to the cemetery.
That sounds a bit like our lollipop sign thing.
Oh, don't tell them. I want to share felonies that I've committed on it.
Not quite the same level, but there we go.
No, thankfully not. No, that is absolutely bizarre. I think a lot of America will be watching that with bated breath. To see when it comes out. A lot of the world as well.
I think the world, because I think that was one of the. I mean, I wasn't alive at the time, but it's one of those sort of incidents, those world happenings where you think, where were you when? And there's only so many of those things that you have, I suppose, in your lifetime. So it might have been the JFK. 9/11, absolutely. You know, for us, it was Princess Di. You know, there's lots of things where you think, actually, where were you when you found this? And the JFK, I suppose, for millions and millions and millions of people, is like this massive event in time where you think, shit, not quite the world stopped, but like I remember exactly where I was when that happened.
Yeah, I wasn't born.
No, neither was I. No.
Just to be clear. No, that is fascinating. The other thing we wanted to ask you about as well, because we know you're a big American football fan as well. So Raiders, obviously, they
suck.
Yeah, let's not mention the Raiders. We're not going to mention the Steelers, who.
Well, don't mention the Bears either. Then, if that's the case, we'll put them all in the same bracket.
We'll lump them to the same bracket. Steelers made the playoffs again, only to bomb out in the first round, and we've got the Chiefs and the Eagles. And they're difficult to root for either of them for me. I don't want to see the Chiefs do anything. And being a Steelers fan, even though never set. Well, actually, no, I have been to Pennsylvania just once.
Eagles will win it.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, Eagles. Yeah, Eagles will win that. Saquon Barkley's is just a
phenomenal,
absolutely like amazing talent. And I think the Eagles D potentially could shut down Mahomes and the offense. But I think Eagles win that. I think it'll be close, but I think the Eagles win.
What's your take, Vic?
I think the Eagles have far more talent. I think the Chiefs have Mahomes and Andy Reid. You give them an extra week to scheme, and Spagnuolo, who's probably one of the best defensive coordinators. I think the Chiefs could win it. I think the Eagles are far more talented. I think their coach is a clown.
Right. Okay. Nail the colours to the mast. Don't sit on the fence, Vic. Just say exactly what you think. Don't sugarcoat it. It's fine.
Oh, fair play. So we've talked then about your podcast, and we've talked about your stories and your books that you're writing. What's next? I know you can't give us away some of the things that you're working on, or potentially in the can, but what's the end goal for Vic Ferrari?
I don't want to get too into specifics, but I was telling you guys off air, there's a very good chance I might be narrating a true crime series on your Channel 4 in the UK. So I'm looking forward to that. I got both fingers crossed, and I'm going to try to mention your podcast. I'll see if I can get it in there, which they'll probably go, what the fuck?
Who the fuck are these guys?
Yeah. Hey, listen, I get you guys some traction. I'll do it.
You know what? I didn't think you were going to talk about it, but now you're talking about it. Look, I'm really, really excited about this. Genuinely, you're our favorite guest on our podcast and stuff, and we always love having you on. And I'm not just saying that. My daughters text me saying I love Vic. So genuinely, and
what's his name?
So my daughter's name's Amy. She's texting saying, I love Vic Ferrari. So,
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it.
And she genuinely is like, oh my God, Vic's on again. And it's like brilliant. So you are our favorite guest. And if there's some way you can somehow dovetail Tallboy Radio into that would be.
Yeah, if I can. Yeah.
Yeah. See, when I teed you up with that was the idea of sidestepping around that, so you didn't share that information.
But now Vic has, and we haven't. Then we can absolutely go full tilt.
I meant though, really, with YouTube and your podcast, how far can you take it? How far do you want to take these books? And my other question to you as well, because obviously we know that Vic Ferrari isn't your real name. We're not asking you to share what your real name is, just to be clear. Do you ever regret not using your real name? If fame came and knocked on the door.
No. Enough people know me. It's funny, like people reach out to me on social media, like, I know who you are. Like guys I haven't spoken to. Yeah, you'll give me that Vic Ferrari bullshit.
I don't know your real name, but Vic Ferrari sounds so cool. That's like that is like, you are Vic Ferrari now, from now until forever.
If you go Google Vic Ferrari on the television show Taxi. You'll laugh your ass off. Andy Kaufman played Vic Ferrari on the television on the TV show Taxi.
Yeah. So when you first reached out to us, our Google name Vic Ferrari, as I do with any guest, just to find out a little bit more about them, just to research them.
What?
And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to retype this. I've made a mistake here. But no, I don't know if it was me. I don't know if I've got a huge ego or what have you. But if I'd used a pseudonym to write books and to have a podcast, don't know if I'd want. Would you? You know, people were talking about this Vic Ferrari guy, but we need to be talking about.
Yeah,
Adam
but
Dickinson.
but ultimately, you know, the people that know you, the people that love you, the people that care about you, know who you are, and and it's just a persona and it's just a pseudonym, and you know, I not that I'm ever going to be to the point where I need a suit. Well, you say that I need a pseudonym. You know, you never know. Fingers crossed. You know. In fame or infamy, depending on which way you go about it. But you know, look, you know, my wife will still know me, and my kids still know me. You'll still know me as Gaz. You know what I mean? So the people that care, the people that know you are. So pseudonym's
just kind of evolved. I did it first for the books. I never thought I'd write a police book, and then that started, and then I started going on. I was a guest on shows. I went with that name, and then I started my podcast. So it's just kind of it works.
Yeah. Do you ever get to the point though where, and I don't know, where, you know, if someone shouts Vic, do you turn around? And then someone shouts your real name, do you turn around? It's like, oh, do you ever get that sort of really weird?
I just had this conversation with somebody recently, and they said, you know, at some point, someone's going to recognize you. No, I've not. No one's come up to me in public and recognized me, my face or my voice. Okay. So someone told me, he said, a relative told me, he said, at some point, someone's going to hear you at the airport or see you with something, you know. So, all right, we'll see what happens.
Someone's going to listen to Channel 4 and go, that's Vic. That's it. That's the guy.
It happened to me once in Scotland. I got recognised from the podcast that we did.
You did?
Yeah. I was you,
You did, yeah.
Yeah. I was up in Edinburgh, and this guy came up to me and goes, hey, you the baked beans guy? I was like, hey, oh, yeah, I am,
yeah. We did what one of, I mean, to be fair, one of not many, but we'd like to do more sort of outside broadcasts. I mean, Adam went up to Scotland and we did an outside broadcast for the World Disability Darts Tournament. So people playing darts, and there was loads of German people there, and they gave us a room, and genuinely actually think they thought we were bigger than we were, and they gave us a separate room, and we were going out, we were getting guests in and interviewing, and basically we were just two douchebags on a piss up in Scotland sort of thing, doing a podcast. And they thought we were like the bee's knees. They thought we were brilliant and golden, and they kept bringing these people. And would you like to speak to Ethel? She's this woman. Would you like to speak to whoever? And we're like, yeah, we'll interview them. It's fine. And then this guy called, hey, you're the baked beans, dude. Like, okay. Fine.
Yeah. It was a bit weird. It was
funny.
It was surreal. It was very, very surreal. But there's a little bit of me, I think,
notoriety. Exactly.
It's weird for me. It's weird when people, because people get a hold of me through Twitter or Instagram or on YouTube. They'll comment, and some people are very nice, but it's almost like, but I get it now because I was always that way with famous people that I liked. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't call it, I had one or two people, I wouldn't call it a stalker to that point.
Right.
But like I politely answered them a couple of times. And then, when I didn't, I was busy or something. They got upset, and it kind of spooked me a little bit.
Well, keep an eye on Stuart then. He's commented a lot today. No, I'm joking. I know Stuart. I've met Stuart. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
He is. And he's guested on the podcast in the past. So have you got an interesting guest coming up on your podcast that you need to tell us about, Vic, that you've got anything to organize?
Yeah, my last episode, I'm going to hook you guys up with him. His name is Lou Ferrante. I almost said retired. He's a reformed gangster. He did 8 years in federal prison. He was a professional car thief, and then he graduated into becoming a truck hijacker. He used to steal like those Snap-on tool trucks,
right?
And then disperse the tools everywhere. And he's a professional heist guy, and turned his life around. He's written a series of books. They're all really good. And I don't have anybody right now planned, but I will. I mean, and just taking one step at a time with this podcast.
No, it's awesome. It is awesome. I watched one the other night, and it's a guest that you've teed us up with as well. So we've got another episode in between. But next Tuesday, we're sitting down with Red Womet, who you have interviewed on your podcast. And he's an interesting fellow, isn't he? He's had a very interesting life.
Yeah, he was an FBI informant undercover for 18 years. He infiltrated the Chicago Mafia. If you ever saw the movie Casino, he knew Joe Pesci's character well. Grew up with him, Anthony Spilatro. The guy Frank Vincent that plays Frank Collada, he knew him. Ask him about Joey the Clown Lombardo. That guy, and do a little research into Joey the Clown Lombardo. I mean, the guy, Here's a mobster that every time he got arrested made a ridiculous face.
Yeah.
Like to piss off the cops. He walked into the Chicago courthouse with a newspaper to cover his face, and then he cut a section out so he could look through it. Google that guy's name and pull up his photos and the stories that went with it. I mean, the guy is just funny.
Yeah, I must admit, there's one of the names that I wrote down off the back of watching your episode. I thought we need to speak to this guy about that. Yeah, it sounds like a real interesting character. So, 5 years into Tallboy Radio, an hour into this podcast. I probably should have worked out how many hours you've actually recorded, but I haven't. Maybe we'll work that out for next week. Vic, do you want to wrap it up? Like I said, we said at the start, we're not just blowing gas up your ass, if that is a genuine American expression. The beer I'm drinking is quite strong. That might not be it. So, we genuinely appreciate you giving up our time. You are, without shadow of a doubt, the favorite guest that we've had on there. If you're another guest who's listened to this, well,
we like you as well.
Yeah, you're our second favorite. You're our second favorite. But we'll definitely have you back on again before the year is out. But do you want to wrap it up for us tonight?
Sure. For your listeners, if you want to check out my books, just type in my name, Vic. Go to Amazon, type in my name, Vic Ferrari, like the car. You can preview all my NYPD books for free. They're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download. And just go to YouTube and type in NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast. And you can check out my interviews with cops and gangsters.
There you go. Gaza?
Oh, I don't want it to stop. I don't want it to end. Look, I said it. Vic, you're an absolute legend, living legend, and we love having you on. Can't wait until we have you on for the next time, and more stories, more laughs, more goofing around. It's always an absolute pleasure and a hoot, and I can't wait.
Indeed. And thank you again from myself. Thank you to everybody who's guested in the podcast in the last 5 years. Hopefully, you'll come on and guest with us again in the next 5 years and beyond. Thank you to Gaz, to Andy, and to Dave, who hosted it with, and the fifth TBR guy, Ken. We'll say hello to you because he's not been with us for a while, but he has guested on episodes since. So that just leaves it for me to wrap up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us, Vic, and we will see you again soon on the Tallboy Radio podcast.